Hi, my name is Mike Gill. I'm the president of Fusion Retail Management Systems. We are the point of sale and warehouse management provider for Acumatica. Today I'd like to take an opportunity to walk through point of sale, features, benefits, the integration with Acumatica, and how it can save you and your clients time and money. At Fusion Retail Management Systems, our mission is to work with entrepreneurial retail companies typically between 3 and 100 locations. Our intent is to change the way they do their business by providing completely integrated retail solutions. Typical retail environment today has many diverse moving pieces. You have your financial back end, your retail operations, your wholesale distribution, event management, field sales, e-commerce. With Fusion and Acumatica, you have one cohesive operating environment where everything feeds into one database. Items are items, customers are customers, no duplicate entry, no redundancies. The competitive advantages that Fusion offers are several. First off, our seamless integration. We integrate at the item and SKU level within Acumatica. Each store is a warehouse, so simply set up a warehouse and it operates as a store. Acumatica controls the pricing, so it's consistent pricing throughout, and there's one central location for pricing. Purchasing, transfers, physical inventories are all done within Acumatica. Fusion is different than other point-of-sale systems. We do not write to the general ledger. We create sales orders or invoices in the accounting system. Customers are managed in Acumatica, but they can be added at the register. Sales can be either posted individually per transaction at the register, or can be rolled up depending on how you choose to run your business. FusionPOS creates sales orders and or invoices in Acumatica. We also provide for multi-step transactions, so you can have orders at the register that are both carried out and subsequently fulfilled. We integrate with cash management for posting of cash transactions and credit card. We do not write to the general ledger, one thing different. Another advantage that Fusion has is independent store operations. Fusion does have a client install at each store. This enables the store to operate independently without internet connection to the corporate server. Data is communicated between the store and the corporate server behind the scenes and instantaneously. Data can be moved from the corporate server to Acumatica at user-defined intervals, from immediate to once a day to once an hour to once a shift, depending on how you configure the environment. Fusion has another advantage in that we provide different customer types. Of course, you have the default store customer for running transactions that are not necessarily, you don't want to retain demographic information on the transaction. On the other end of the spectrum, we have accounting customers. Accounting customers are those customers that are maintained in Acumatica. Every customer in Acumatica is a customer at the register. And transactions for accounting customers are posted individually. So every transaction at the register results in a sales order and or an invoice in Acumatica. As an alternative, we have marketing customers. From Acumatica's perspective, marketing customers are not tracked. All the demographic information is retained within Fusion. We can tell you who bought what, when, where, how they paid for it. But from Acumatica's perspective, this is treated as a cash customer. Cash customers can be consolidated for posting into Acumatica. The point here is that if I have many customers that are purchasing small items in small amounts and I do not want to burden Acumatica with transaction volume, I can roll these transactions up for posting into Acumatica. Very simply, if I have 10 customers that each purchase the same stick of gum, when that rolls up into Acumatica, it will be cash customer, item gum, quantity 10. In addition to different customer types, Fusion has different fulfillment types. Of course, there's the standard cash and carry, which every point-of-sale system has. In addition to that, however, there is the Acumatica fulfillment side. Within Fusion, I can set up a sales order in Acumatica for future fulfillment. Open sales orders are then processed within Acumatica as with any other open sales order. Acumatica manages the shipments, the sales orders, and the invoicing of those transactions. We also have what we call mixed mode transactions. Mixed mode transactions are where a customer would come into the store, buy 5 items, carry out 3, and 2 would be subsequently delivered. From Fusion's perspective and Acumatica's perspective, those are one transaction of a sales order of 5 items. 3 would be invoiced, and 2 would be left in the status of an open sales order. Finally, Fusion has an abundance of standard features comparable to any full-featured point-of-sale system. From advanced pricing, integrated credit card, commission types, integrated time clock, multi-currency, layaway, rent-to-own, gift card integration. We can have single or multiple cash drawers, and every user interface can be customized for that specific user. All receipts, be they 8.5 by 11, or the receipt printer, can be customized to meet the customer's requirements. Finally, Fusion works on both conventional and Windows Mobile registers. More information can be gleaned from our website, FusionRMS.com, or for Acumatica-centric information, there is AcumaticaRMS.com. One of the features of Fusion RMS is the ability to customize the user interface. This is our standard user interface from many years gone by. SF MoMA, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, for example, does not have touchscreen. Therefore, they engage the system through function keys on the bottom right. US Space and Rocket Center, the same way. Ranjan, however, uses touchscreen. So in this case, the touchscreen buttons are engaged and can be used to drive the application. Hockey Giant is a combination of touchscreen and function commands. Vermont Teddy Bear uses Fusion in their retail stores, and again, it's all touchscreen enabled. CBS Studios for their commissary in Los Angeles. As I mentioned, Fusion retail management systems can be configured to meet the requirements of you or your customer. Fusion comes with its own security manager, so clerks don't have to necessarily be users within Acumatica. They can, however, for payroll and time tracking purposes. What I thought I would do is walk through a series of transactions, first to demonstrate the integration of Fusion, and then to demonstrate the functionality. As mentioned earlier, one of the features of Fusion is the ability to maintain accounting customers within the system. As you can see from the customer lookup, if there is an accounting ID here, that means it is a customer in Acumatica. If there is no accounting ID, that means it is a marketing customer. Again, marketing customers from Acumatica's perspective are treated as cash customers. I can add a customer at any time from the register. If I can set the default that this will either be a marketing customer upon adding or an accounting customer. If it is an accounting customer, Acumatica will provide the accounting ID, and that will be written back into Fusion. Likewise, I can edit a customer from within the register. Edit customers can be a little bit sketchy. We do not allow clerks to edit customers and write that data back into Acumatica. What the clerks will do is edit the customer. That information will go back as a file to the admin user within Acumatica and within Fusion. That user can decide whether or not to update the record within the accounting system. In addition to the customer lookup, there are item lookup. The item lookup, likewise, you can see there are a number of different ways to look up items, from item class to by description or by item key. Likewise, I can look up for this location or all locations at any time. The fields that are in the lookup are user-defined. I can put any number of attributes on the item lookup screen. To demonstrate some of the basic functionality of the Fusion register, I'm going to go through a couple of transactions. First, I'll do a general cash sale for an accounting customer. I pick the customer, Richard Grossi. I will then scan in 2 items and then tender the sale. You'll notice that the quick cash buttons are available. I'm going to select $20 cash. I can either email the receipt, print the receipt, both, or neither. If I do not have the email address here, I can add it at this point in time. For demo, I'm going to print the receipt, and then I'm going to say OK, to show me the cash to be returned. I'm going to come back in here and look at the receipt register. Here you will see the transaction with Richard Grossi, the items that were purchased, and the tender type of cash. To complete this, we'll go into Acumatica, and we will see this transaction in Acumatica. As you'll see, here's the transaction. These are the 2 items that were sold. You'll notice the transaction is completed. The shipment has been generated, and the invoice has been created. Now, returning to Fusion, we'll take on another transaction type. We will come in and do a credit card transaction for our customer, James Brown. I'm going to scan his loyalty ID. You'll notice it knows that James Brown. I can edit the information if desired. I will come in and order a couple of items for Mr. Brown. And in this case, I'm going to process a credit card transaction. This is the credit card specifics. I'm going to hit enter. It'll return to me an authorization code. It will ask me for a customer signature. You can sign on the desktop. And again, I can print, email, or both or neither. In this case, I'm going to do neither for the process of the demo. I'm going to come in, show you what the receipt looks like. Again, here's the amount tendered. I'm going to come back into Acumatica. I'm going to go find the transaction that I just posted, come in here, and here's the transaction here. These are the items that were purchased. You'll see the transaction has been completed. Shipment has been generated. The payment is Amex, and it has been processed. And the invoice has been created. Moving on to another transaction, we'll try an on-account sale. Our customer, George Harrison, let's come in here. George Harrison, right there. Okay, again, Mr. Harrison's going to buy a couple of items. And because he's an accounting customer, we can process this on account. If I have a PO number, I can enter it. Notice that an on-account sale, a signature can be required. And again, print, email, both or neither. Now when I come back into Acumatica and refresh, here's my transaction for George Harrison. Again, these are the two items. You'll notice it has been completed. The payment is on-account payment, so there is no payment. It is applied on account. And the transaction has been invoiced and completed. Another transaction we will run is a mixed payment transaction for our customer, Steve Jobs. He will buy a couple of items. In this case, we're going to have Mr. Jobs pay $50 in cash and the balance in check. I'm going to print this to show you what it looks like. Click OK. And we'll minimize this. And you'll see here's our transaction for Mr. Jobs. There are two tender types, cash and check, and the transaction number is provided. We'll go into Acumatica, and we will refresh. And find the transaction that we just processed. And you'll see here's the transaction for Steve Jobs. Again, the items that were purchased. The transaction has been completed. Shipment has been generated. And the payments will be recorded as cash and check. So again, what we've done here is we've walked through several fairly traditional transactions that occur at every register. And we've shown you how the transaction looks in Fusion and how the transaction results in Acumatica. What we'll do now is show you how we can handle an exchange transaction. In this transaction, we'll assume that we'll look for Mr. Jobs, who we just sold some merchandise to, wants to exchange something or return something. We can go back and look at the customer history. As you can see, customer history. We can look up the last 50 transactions, the date range, if he bought it last month, if you have a specific item key you're looking for, or as we would advise, if your transactions are barcoded, you can simply scan the transaction ID here and recall that transaction. However, in this case, we'll look up the last 50 transactions. As you can see, Mr. Jobs came here. This is a transaction which occurred earlier in 2014. He bought these items. He paid for it through multiple tender types. The reason that it's important to know how he paid for it is typically you want to issue a refund in the same manner that it was paid. You don't want to issue a cash refund for a credit card sale. But in this case, we're going to come in here and he's going to return one of these items. He's going to return this item here. And you'll see this item is being returned for $67.95. I can go ahead and process this and issue a refund via a gift card, a cash refund, or a refund on account. In this case, however, just to complicate matters a little bit, we'll come in and we'll add a couple of more items. As you can see, this transaction both consists of a refund as well as the purchase of several other items, netting the difference to $8.88. Mr. Jobs is going to come in here and tender. You'll notice there are reason codes scattered throughout the system. These are reason codes that are pulled down from Acumatica, so I can define why someone would return an item, why someone would clear a cash till, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, he's going to pay cash. I'm going to say $10. I'm going to print this just to show you what it would look like. I can email it also, likewise. So we're going to come in here. We're going to see what that receipt would look like. And as you can see, here's the transaction for Mr. Jobs. This was the refund of the item. Then there was the ensuing purchases of these items. The net due was $8.88. Cash paid, change due, we're all good. Now when we come into Acumatica, what we will see is that this item is actually set up as a refund. We'll look for the transaction that we just completed. Here's the transaction for Mr. Jobs. As you'll see, it is completed. The shipment has been created. This was the refund item that was incurred, and it is processed accordingly. What I'll show you now is an example of how you would handle a mixed mode transaction where you have both a shipment as well as a carry out on the same transaction. So we're going to come in here. We're going to, we'll pick on Doug Johnson. We're going to come in, look up Mr. Johnson. He's here. Doug Johnson, all good. We are going to scan in a couple of items, 101, 3200. And Doug's got these two items. The top item, this 101, 3050, he's going to want us to ship it to him for whatever reason. We don't have it in stock, or Doug just wants us to have it ship it to him. We'll come in here, engage the shipping function within Fusion RMS. You'll notice the default is carry out. You can change the default. If all of your transactions, the default are ship, you can change this so the default fulfillment type is ship. However, in this case, the default is carry out. I can come in, I can flag this particular item for ship. I can determine where it is to be shipped from. I can say if there's a cost associated with it. And then I can put delivery notes or fulfillment notes. Deliver to backdoor. Deliver to backdoor. Okay? So what you'll see, when I come back in here, you'll notice that this item has been flagged to ship from Warehouse 1. Here are the delivery notes accordingly, and freight has been charged. I will come in and tender. Doug's going to pay via credit card. Here are the credit card specifics. Select Enter. My authorization code is returned. I will come in and Doug's cryptic signature. And again, I'm going to print this just to show you what it looks like. And then I'm going to say OK. Again, you will see this is my Doug Johnson transaction. It says ship to Doug Johnson. I can change that ship to address if I want. These are the item. This is the item to be shipped. Notice here are the delivery notes and how it was paid for. Doug paid for Amex, and we're off and running. Now, when we go into Acumatica, what will that transaction look like? If you'll remember, we have Fusion Invoice, Fusion Returns. We also have Fusion Sales Orders. A Fusion Sales Order is a transaction for which an open sales order line remains. So we'll come in here and we'll look up our last transaction. You'll notice here's Doug Johnson. Here are the items that we had. Here is you'll notice this item, the second item, which it has already been shipped. A shipment has been created for that item. The other item remains, the warehouse has been changed to Warehouse 1. That item remains open. And you'll notice here are the delivery notes, delivered to back door, as we said earlier. Now this item, a payment, by the way, payment has been received and processed. Now this item can be processed just as any other sales order would be processed within Acumatica. What we've just done is basically walk through the integration between Fusion RMS and Acumatica. In addition to the integration, Fusion has many other conventional features which you would expect in a full functioning point-of-sale system. For example, I would scan a customer from their loyalty card, and I would come in and scan several items. Now, in this case, assume that the client left their wallet in the car and you have to suspend a sale and do another transaction. In this case, you would want to suspend the sale and proceed on with another customer's transaction. Fusion has two basic ways of suspending or interrupting a sale. I can create a quote or I can suspend a sale. A suspend sale allows you to temporarily table this transaction while you conduct other transactions. Now, when the customer returns for whom the sale was suspended, I can simply cascade through the suspended sales, recall that transaction, add another item if I want, and then settle that transaction. A suspend sale is different than a quote. At the end of the day, suspended sales from a cash register go away. A quote, on the other hand, remains in the system and can be recalled subsequently at another day. A quote is very useful in the case where a customer comes in. Again, I will use our loyalty card to pull up a customer. It's James Brown. And the customer wants to buy several items. And then for whatever reason decides they want to table this transaction and are not interested, or they want to come back another day. I can save the quote and go from there. It will ask me if I want to print the quote. I'm going to say no. Several days later, Mr. Brown comes back in and decides he wants to review the quote and possibly purchase the items. We're going to scan his loyalty card. And again, I can recall the quote. I can look up by transaction number if I know the transaction number. I can look up for the current customer. I can look up by date, by invoice number, any number of variables. In this case, I'm going to look up for the current customer because I know it was Mr. Brown. He only had one quote in the system. I can see these are the items he had. He wants to come in here and void this item, doesn't want that item for whatever reason. Proceed on with tendering the sale. We're off and running, and okay. So as you can see, I have the ability to suspend sales. I can create quotes, recall quotes. Fusion also has the ability to handle discount items, discount quotes. virtually any pricing parameter that is available within Acumatica. Fusion Retail Management System is a fully integrated, full-featured point-of-sale system that works with Acumatica. What I've hopefully shown you today is the integration is seamless and essentially in real time. Now, of course, if you have a number of stores, you will probably want to space out the integration so that these transactions are collected and synced on a more manageable schedule. I hope this has been informative. If you have any more questions, please click on the Ask a Question button on the frame.